The wine-glass trembled in the millionaire's hand as the little girl whispered urgently in his ear. Her 7-year-old voice carried a warning that would save his life, but expose a betrayal beyond imagination. No one at the elegant restaurant could have predicted what would happen next. Where are you watching this incredible story from? Hit like and subscribe for more thrilling tales of unexpected heroes. The crystal chandeliers of Bellisimo's cast a golden glow over Boston's elite as Robert Wells swirled the Cabernet in his glass. At 63, the self-made millionaire had developed a palate as refined as his business instincts. Tonight, however, something felt off about his usual table in the corner. Perhaps it was the new manager hovering nearby, her smile too practiced, her eyes darting nervously whenever she glanced his way. "Entschuldigung, dieser Wein schmeckt anders als sonst," Robert said, gesturing to his wine. The manager, Emma Porter, froze. Her customer service smile faltered as the foreign words hung in the air between them. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't," Emma stammered, her knuckles whitening around the leather menu she clutched. Sweat beaded above her carefully penciled brows. From the next table, a small voice piped up. He said the wine tastes different than usual. Robert turned, surprised to find a child with copper braids and serious eyes looking up at him. She couldn't be more than 7 years old, sitting primly beside her father, who appeared equally startled by his daughter's interruption. "Lily, please," the father whispered, but Robert waved him off. "Your daughter speaks German," Robert asked, impressed. Before her father could answer, the little girl slipped from her chair and approached Robert's table, her eyes fixed not on him, but on the manager, who had begun backing away. "She put something in your glass," Lily said quietly, "when you were looking at the menu." She poured from a little bottle in her pocket, not from the wine bottle. Emma's face drained of color. "That's ridiculous. I was just freshening his drink." "Lily has quite an imagination," her father said, hurrying over. "Michael Parker," he added, extending his hand to Robert. "I apologize for my daughter's—" "Bitte glauben Sie mir," Lily continued in perfect German. "Sie hat etwas in ihr Getränk getan. Ich habe es gesehen. Please believe me. She put something in your drink. I saw it." Robert's hand stilled on the stem of his wineglass. The genuine concern in the child's eyes couldn't be fabricated. He looked at Emma, who now stood rigid, her breathing shallow. "Is this true?" Robert asked, his voice dangerously calm. Emma bolted for the kitchen. Robert was on his feet instantly, but it was the restaurant's security guard who caught her arm before she could escape. The commotion drew gasps from nearby diners as Emma thrashed against the guard's grip. "Call the police," Robert instructed the maître d'. Then he knelt down to Lily's eye level. "You may have just saved my life, young lady." Michael pulled his daughter protectively against him. "What's happening? Who would want to harm you?" Robert's eyes darkened as he watched Emma being detained. "That's what I intend to find out." He glanced at the small, serious-faced child who watched the scene with an unsettling calmness. "And I believe your extraordinary daughter may have uncovered something far more complicated than a disgruntled employee." What none of them realized as police sirens wailed in the distance was that this night would irreversibly connect their lives, and that the person who had ordered Robert's death was someone he trusted implicitly, someone who was already preparing a backup plan now that the first attempt had failed. Detective James Reynolds studied the small bottle recovered from Emma Porter's pocket. The lab would confirm its contents, but the manager's tearful confession had already revealed the truth. Sodium cyanide, enough to kill a man Robert Wells's size within minutes. "She hired you a month ago specifically for this job?" Reynolds asked, his weathered face betraying no emotion. Emma nodded miserably in the interrogation room. "She said he deserved it, that he'd stolen everything from her." "And she is?" Emma hesitated. "Margaret Wells, his wife." Across town, Lily Parker sat in her bedroom, surrounded by German storybooks. Michael watched from the doorway, marveling at his daughter's capacity to appear unaffected by the evening's events. "Mutti would be proud I remembered," Lily said without looking up. "She always said languages save lives." Michael's heart constricted at the mention of his late wife. Sarah had been gone for 2 years now, a car accident that had nearly claimed Lily as well, but the wound remained raw. Sarah, with her Swiss-German heritage and gift for languages, had passed that passion to their daughter. "Yes, she would," Michael agreed, sitting beside Lily on her bed. "But how did you know that woman put something in Mr. Wells's drink?" Lily carefully closed her book. "Mutti taught me to watch people's hands. She said hands always tell the truth, even when mouths don't." Michael hugged his daughter close, haunted by the memory of Sarah's lessons. Her work as a translator for international diplomats had taught her to notice details others missed. She'd been teaching Lily observation skills since she was 3, turning it into a game they played in restaurants and parks. The doorbell's chime interrupted the moment. Michael tensed. It was nearly 9 o'clock. Standing on their modest porch was Robert Wells himself, his chauffeur waiting in a sleek black car at the curb. "I apologize for the late hour," Robert said, "but I needed to thank the little hero properly." His eyes crinkled with genuine warmth as he spotted Lily peering around her father's leg. "That's not necessary," Michael began. "Actually, it is." Robert's expression turned serious. "May I come in? There are things you should know." Then inside their living room, Robert declined coffee, but couldn't take his eyes off the framed photo of Sarah on the mantel. "Your wife?" Michael nodded. "She passed 2 years ago. Car accident." Robert's gaze lingered on the photo. "She has your daughter's eyes, or rather your daughter has hers." "Mr. Wells, please call me Robert." "Robert, why are you really here?" The millionaire sighed heavily. "My wife has been arrested for conspiracy to commit murder. Apparently she's been planning my demise for months." He looked directly at Michael. "The detective mentioned you're a language professor at Boston University." Michael nodded, confused by the non sequitur. "And your late wife was a translator?" "For the State Department, yes. How did you—" "The name Parker seemed familiar," Robert said. "I've been searching my memory since leaving the restaurant." He leaned forward. "Did your wife ever mention working on confidential financial translations involving European banking laws?" Michael felt a chill creep up his spine. She couldn't discuss specifics of her work. "Of course." Robert nodded, then turned to Lily, who had been silently absorbing every word. "You're an extraordinary young lady, Lily. Has anyone ever told you that you have an old soul?" Lily's solemn eyes met his. "Mutti used to say I was born knowing secrets." A shadow passed over Robert's face. "I think your mother may have been right." He reached for his wallet and withdrew a business card. "I believe your family and mine are connected in ways I'm only beginning to understand, and I think we may be in danger." The Wells estate sprawled across 2 acres in Beacon Hill, its Georgian architecture an elegant reminder of old Boston money. Money that Robert had earned himself, not inherited. Now, as he led Michael and Lily through the ornate front door, the house felt cavernous, emptied of warmth by Margaret's betrayal. "I've arranged for the guest house to be prepared," Robert explained as they entered the grand foyer. "My security team will ensure you're protected." Michael bristled. "We appreciate your concern, but we don't need charity." "This isn't charity," Robert said firmly. "It's self-preservation. If Margaret hired someone to poison me, she likely won't stop there, and your daughter is now a key witness." Robert's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Detective Reynolds. Excuse me." As Robert stepped away to take the call, Lily wandered toward a large oil painting hanging above the marble fireplace. It depicted a stern-faced woman with auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon, her hand resting possessively on Robert's shoulder. "That's her, isn't it?" Lily asked when Robert returned. "The woman who wanted to hurt you?" Robert nodded grimly. "My wife of 28 years. He gestured for them to follow him into his study. "That was the detective. Margaret's been released on bail. Her family posted $2 million within hours." Michael instinctively moved closer to Lily. "How is that possible? She tried to have you killed." "The Harrington family has connections even money can't buy," Robert said bitterly. "And technically, it's Emma Porter who administered the poison. Margaret claims she was merely discussing theoretical scenarios with Emma, who misunderstood." "That's ridiculous," Michael exclaimed. Robert unlocked a drawer in his desk and withdrew a thick folder. "Last year I discovered Margaret had been systematically embezzling from our charitable foundation, millions diverted to offshore accounts." He spread photographs across the desk, surveillance images of Margaret meeting with various men in expensive suits. "When I confronted her, she claimed it was for a surprise project. I wanted to believe her." Michael studied the images. "You've been investigating your own wife. After 40 years in business, you develop instincts. Something felt wrong." Robert rubbed his temples. "The poison attempt confirms my suspicions. Margaret wants me gone, not just divorced, but dead." A grandfather clock chimed somewhere in the massive house, its deep tones reverberating through the empty rooms. "Why involve us?" Michael asked. "Surely you have security lawyers." "Because your daughter saved my life," Robert answered simply, "and because I believe your wife's death 2 years ago might not have been an accident." Michael staggered backward. "What?" Robert passed him a newspaper clipping. "Sarah Parker, 34, died in a single vehicle accident on Route 2. The car went off the road. No witnesses." He looked up gravely. 2 days after she completed a confidential translation of documents related to the Harrington family's European holdings. "That's impossible," Michael whispered. "Sarah was translating diplomatic communications." "That was her cover," Robert said gently. "The State Department occasionally uses their linguists for Treasury investigations." Lily, who had been silently absorbing every word, suddenly spoke. "Mutti kept a secret box. She said if anything happened to her, I should find the blue key." Both men turned to stare at the child. "What blue key, sweetheart?" Michael asked, his voice trembling. Lily's eyes reflected a wisdom beyond her years. "The one she hid in my German dictionary, the one that opens her special box." The blue key was exactly where Lily said it would be, nestled inside the hollowed-out spine of a children's German dictionary. Michael's hands trembled as he held the small, azure-painted key that Sarah had hidden there. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why wouldn't she tell me about this?" Robert's security chief, a former Navy SEAL named Davis, stood by the door of Michael's apartment. They had returned to collect essential belongings and now to search for Sarah's secret box. "People keep secrets to protect those they love," Robert said quietly. "Even from each other." Lily sat cross-legged on the living room floor, eyes closed in concentration. "It's under the loose board in Mutti's closet, the one that squeaks like a mouse." Michael stared at his daughter. "How do you know these things?" "Mutti told me, in German." Lily opened her eyes. "She said only to remember if something bad happened. Something did happen at the restaurant, so I remembered." The three of them crowded into the master bedroom closet. Michael knelt down, pressing floorboards until one gave a distinct squeak. Beneath it was a metal lockbox, painted the same shade of blue as the key. Inside the box lay a USB drive, a handwritten journal, and a sealed envelope addressed to Michael and Lily, only in emergency. Michael's hand shook as he opened the envelope. Sarah's familiar handwriting filled the single page. "My darlings, if you're reading this, I pray it's because Lily remembered my instructions, not because something has happened to me. But if I'm gone, you must know. The Harrington Wells financial documents contain evidence of international money laundering. The German conversations mention eliminating liability parties. Margaret Harrington Wells is orchestrating everything. Her brother Thomas is the enforcer. I've given copies to my handler, but they may have been compromised. Trust no one except Robert Wells. He doesn't know yet, but he's also a target. The USB contains everything. Forever, my loves, S. The room fell silent as Michael passed the letter to Robert, whose face grew ashen as he read. Thomas Harrington, Robert muttered. Margaret's brother disappeared 20 years ago. The family claimed he died in a boating accident. Apparently not, Michael said grimly. Robert's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and paled. Margaret's counterfiled for an emergency protective order against me, claiming I've become dangerously paranoid and threatened her. She's demanding access to the house and all financial accounts. Can she do that? Michael asked. With her family's connections? Yes. Robert ran a hand through his silver hair. We need to move quickly. The judge will likely rule in her favor by morning. Davis's radio crackled. His expression hardened as he listened to the transmission. Sir, we have a situation. 2 vehicles just pulled up outside. 4 men approaching the building. Michael grabbed Lily, clutching her against his chest. Back exit, Davis ordered, drawing his weapon. Now! They hurried down the service stairs, Davis leading the way. Through the exit door, they could see Robert's car waiting, engine running. A shot rang out. Davis fell against the wall, clutching his shoulder. Go! He shouted. I'll hold them! Robert pushed Michael toward the car. Get Lily out of here! As they sprinted across the parking lot, Lily suddenly stopped, pulling away from her father's grasp. Lily! Michael cried. The little girl ran back toward the building, ducking beneath a parked van. When she emerged seconds later, she was clutching Sarah's blue lockbox that had been dropped in their hasty escape. Muti said never lose it, she gasped, as Michael scooped her up, running for the car. More shots echoed behind them as they dove into the back seat. The driver accelerated immediately, tires squealing against the asphalt. Where to, sir? The driver asked, his eyes on the rearview mirror. Robert looked at the terrified father and the strangely calm child beside him. The airport, the private hangar. The private jet climbed through cloud cover, leaving Boston's lights twinkling below. Michael stared out the window, his mind reeling from how quickly their lives had changed. Beside him, Lily slept fitfully, the blue lockbox clutched against her chest. Davis will be fine, Robert said, settling into the seat across from them. Flesh wound. He's being treated at a private facility. Where are we going? Michael asked. My house in Vermont. Remote enough to be secure, close enough to return quickly when needed. Robert studied the sleeping child. She's remarkable. She's 7, Michael said protectively. 7 going on 40. Robert smiled sadly. She reminds me of my daughter, Rebecca. I didn't know you had children. Robert's eyes clouded. Rebecca died 15 years ago, leukemia. She was 8. He cleared his throat. Margaret and I were different people then, united in grief. I'm sorry, Michael said. After Rebecca died, Margaret changed, became obsessed with the family legacy, the Harrington name. We couldn't have more children, so she poured everything into preserving and expanding the family fortune. Robert's expression hardened. I built my company from nothing. The Harringtons were old money, dwindling money. My success restored their fortunes. The plane hit turbulence, jostling them. Lily stirred but didn't wake. I've been going through Sarah's files on the USB, Robert continued, lowering his voice. Your wife uncovered something massive. The Harrington Foundation has been laundering money for a syndicate with connections to arms dealers. Margaret and her supposedly dead brother Thomas have been running it for years. Michael felt sick, and Sarah found out. Robert nodded grimly. She was translating documents for a Treasury investigation. Margaret must have discovered she had access, so they killed her. Michael's voice broke, made it look like an accident. I believe so. Why not kill me too? Or Lily? Michael's hands trembled. We've been living normally for 2 years. Sarah must have hidden the evidence well. They probably thought it died with her. Robert leaned forward. Until tonight, when Lily demonstrated she knows things Sarah told her. The jet began its descent into a small airfield surrounded by dense forest. As they taxied to a stop, Robert's phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read the message. The judge granted Margaret's request, he said tightly. She's been given full access to all our properties and accounts. What does that mean for us? It means we're officially fugitives, Robert replied. I've just been accused of kidnapping you and Lily, fleeing with embezzled funds. Michael stared in disbelief. That's insane. We came willingly. Margaret's playing hardball. Robert's jaw tightened. But she's made a critical mistake. What's that? She doesn't know about this property. I purchased it under a shell corporation after Rebecca's death. A place to grieve privately. His eyes met Michael's. No one knows about it except my most trusted attorney who's meeting us here. As they deplaned, a silver-haired woman approached. She wore hiking boots with her tailored suit and carried a leather briefcase. Robert, she greeted him with a nod. I've prepared everything as requested. Catherine Chen, Robert introduced her. The only lawyer I trust completely. She's been with me since before I met Margaret. The situation in Boston is deteriorating, Catherine reported. Margaret's brother Thomas has resurfaced, claiming you've had a psychotic break and kidnapped this man and his daughter. Michael instinctively pulled Lily closer. The child had awakened and was watching everything with those unsettlingly perceptive eyes. He has a scar, Lily said suddenly. The bad man in Boston, a scar like a fishhook under his eye. The adults turned to stare at her. Thomas Harrington? Robert asked gently. Have you seen him before, Lily? She nodded solemnly. He came to our house once. When Mutti was still alive, they argued in German. He didn't know I could understand. What did they say? Michael asked, kneeling before his daughter. He said Mutti should stop looking at his papers, or there would be consequences. Lily's eyes filled with tears for the first time since the ordeal began. 2 days later was the car crash. The Vermont house nestled against a mountainside, its vast windows reflecting the pine forest surrounding it. Inside, Michael paced the living room, while Catherine and Robert huddled over laptops, piecing together the evidence from Sarah's USB drive. This is extraordinary, Catherine murmured. Bank transfers through 17 countries. Shell companies nested within shells. Your wife documented everything meticulously, she added to Michael. Sarah was thorough, he replied, watching Lily drawing at the kitchen table. It's what made her an exceptional translator. Robert rubbed his eyes. The question is, how do we use this information? Margaret has effectively branded me a kidnapper and embezzler. The moment we surface, we'll be arrested. Not if we can get this to the right people, Catherine countered. The Treasury Department has been investigating the Harrington Foundation for years. Sarah's evidence could be the key they've been missing, but who can we trust? Michael asked, if Sarah's handler was compromised. A melodious chime interrupted them, the house's security system. On a monitor, they watched a black SUV approaching through the trees. Are we expecting anyone? Michael asked anxiously. Catherine checked her watch. My contact from Treasury, Eleanor Fisher. I've worked with her for 20 years. They watched as a slender woman with steel-grey hair emerged from the vehicle. Catherine pressed the intercom. Identification. The woman held up a Treasury badge. Eleanor Fisher, Financial Crimes Division. Catherine unlocked the gates remotely. Minutes later, Eleanor entered, setting her briefcase on the table. You've stirred up a hornet's nest, Robert, she said without preamble. Boston PD has issued warrants for your arrest. The story's hitting the news cycle. Millionaire abducts child witness. It's all Margaret's doing, Robert began. I know. Eleanor's crisp tone cut him off. I've been investigating the Harrington money trail for nearly a decade. Sarah Parker was working with me. Michael froze. You knew my wife? Eleanor's professional demeanor softened. Sarah was brilliant. Her language skills helped us trace transactions through German, Swiss, and Austrian banks. She looked at Lily. She spoke of her daughter often, said the child had her gift for languages. Lily approached, studying Eleanor with that unnervingly adult gaze. Mutti said if the man with the hook came back, I should find the blue box, and the lady with silver hair would help. Eleanor knelt to Lily's level. Your mother was very brave. She found evidence we needed, but before she could deliver it all, she trailed off, glancing at Michael. Before they killed her, Michael finished flatly. Eleanor nodded grimly. We suspected, but couldn't prove it. So what now? Robert asked. Now we complete Sarah's work. Eleanor opened her briefcase and removed a secure laptop. With what you've found and what we already have, we can finally move against the entire operation. Catherine studied the Treasury agent. Why not go through official channels? Because we have a mole. Eleanor's expression hardened. Someone's been warning targets before we can make arrests. High-level access. A sudden crack echoed through the house, breaking glass. A canister bounced across the wooden floor, spewing smoke. Down! Eleanor shouted, drawing a concealed weapon. More windows shattered. Black-clad figures swarmed through the smoke. Robert grabbed Lily, shielding her with his body. Safe room behind the bookcase. Michael pulled the hidden lever. A section of wall slid open. They tumbled inside as gunfire erupted behind them. The door sealed automatically, cutting off the chaos. Inside the concrete-lined room, emergency lights cast an eerie blue glow. Monitors showed the assault unfolding, at least 8 armed men. Catherine was pinned behind a couch, exchanging fire with the intruders. Eleanor moved with practiced precision, taking down 2 attackers. How did they find us? Michael gasped. The Treasury contact, Robert realized with horror. It was a trap. On one monitor they watched as a familiar figure entered through the shattered front door. A tall man with silver-streaked hair and a hook-shaped scar beneath his right eye. Thomas Harrington had arrived, and as he surveyed the battleground with cold calculation, one thing became chillingly clear. This was no mere financial criminal. This was a man who had killed before and would not hesitate to do so again. In the safe room, Robert accessed a hidden panel, revealing an arsenal of weapons and a tunnel entrance. We need to get Lily out, he said grimly. The tunnel leads to a boathouse on the lake. There's a seaplane. Michael stared at the monitors in horror. What about Catherine and Eleanor? They knew the risks, Robert replied, his voice hollow. Our priority has to be protecting Sarah's evidence and her daughter. On screen, Thomas moved methodically through the house, checking rooms. His voice carried through the audio feed. Find the child. She's all that matters now. The tunnel stretched ahead, illuminated by emergency lights that cast long shadows against the rough stone walls. Robert led the way, a backpack containing Sarah's evidence slung over his shoulder and a pistol gripped tightly in his hand. Michael followed, carrying Lily, who clutched the blue box against her chest. How much further? Michael whispered, his breath visible in the cool underground air. 1/4 mile, Robert replied without turning. The tunnel follows an old stream bed. Above them, muffled gunfire continued. On Robert's wrist, a smartwatch displayed security camera feeds. Catherine crouched behind an overturned table, exchanging fire with Thomas's men. Eleanor was no longer visible. We can't just leave them, Michael insisted. Robert paused, his face grim in the dim light. Catherine has protocols. If she can extract safely, she'll meet us at the rendezvous point. And if she can't? Robert didn't answer. Instead, he checked the watch again. Thomas is methodically searching the house. He knows there's a safe room, but not about the tunnel. It buys us time. They continued forward until the passage widened into a small chamber. Ancient wooden support beams crisscrossed overhead. Rest here a moment, Robert said, setting down the backpack to check his weapon. Michael lowered Lily to her feet. The child hadn't spoken since they entered the tunnel, her eyes wide but strangely calm. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" Michael asked, smoothing her copper braids. Lily nodded. "The bad man won't find us here. It's like the story Mutti used to tell, about the children hiding from the wolf in the secret cave." Michael's throat tightened. Sarah had created bedtime stories to entertain Lily, never imagining they might one day need to hide from real monsters. "Your mother would be very proud of how brave you're being," Robert told Lily gently. A sudden rumble shook dust from the ceiling. All three froze. "What was that?" Michael whispered. Robert's watch beeped. The security feed showed smoke billowing from the house's east wing. "Explosion! They've breached the safe room." His expression hardened. "We need to move. Now." They hurried through the remainder of the tunnel, emerging inside a boathouse where lake water lapped gently against a small dock. A seaplane was moored alongside a speedboat. Robert quickly assessed their options. "The plane will be faster but louder. They'll hear it immediately." "The boat, then?" Michael asked. Robert shook his head. "Too obvious. They'll expect that." He moved to a tarp-covered shape at the back of the boathouse. Underneath was a vintage motorcycle with a sidecar. "Less expected," he explained, rolling it toward the boathouse's rear door. "There's an old logging road that connects to the highway. We can be 20 miles away before they realize we're gone." As Robert prepared the motorcycle, Michael knelt beside Lily. "We're going to take a special ride, okay? You'll sit in the sidecar with the blue box." Lily studied the motorcycle with interest. "Like in the old movies Mutti showed me." "Exactly like that," Michael managed to smile, though his heart was breaking. Sarah should be here, keeping their daughter safe, not him, running from killers through the Vermont wilderness. A distant shout echoed across the lake. Through the boathouse window, Michael glimpsed flashlights moving through the trees toward them. "They're coming," he warned. Robert kick-started the motorcycle. It roared to life, echoing in the enclosed space. "Get in!" Michael settled Lily into the sidecar, making sure the blue box was secure beneath her jacket. He climbed on behind Robert just as the boathouse door splintered open. A single gunshot cracked through the air. Robert gunned the engine, crashing through the rear door onto the forest path beyond. Behind them, men shouted and more shots followed, but they were already disappearing into the darkness. The wind whipped against their faces as they sped along the narrow trail. Lily's eyes were wide, but unafraid, taking in the moonlit forest rushing past them. "What about Eleanor and Catherine?" Michael shouted over the engine's roar. "Catherine's tracking device is still active," Robert called back, tapping his watch. "Moving south on the main road." She got out. "And Eleanor?" Robert's silence was answer enough. The old logging road eventually connected with a 2-lane highway. Robert kept the headlight off, navigating by moonlight until they were miles from the house. Finally, he pulled into an abandoned gas station, its weathered sign creaking in the night breeze. "We'll switch vehicles here," he explained, rolling the motorcycle behind the dilapidated building. In the distance, emergency sirens wailed, heading toward the lake house. "What now?" Michael asked, helping Lily from the sidecar. Robert checked his watch again. "Catherine's signal stopped 20 miles south. That's our rendezvous point. And if it's a trap, if they captured her..." Robert's eyes were hard as flint. "Then we're already dead." Dawn broke over the small Vermont diner, golden light spilling across the worn linoleum floor. In a corner booth, Michael nursed a coffee, while Lily methodically arranged packets of sugar into geometric patterns. They looked like any father and daughter having breakfast, except for the tension in Michael's shoulders and the way his eyes constantly scanned the entrance. The bell above the door jingled. Robert entered, folding a newspaper under his arm. He slid into the booth across from them, his face grim. "We made the front page," he said quietly, showing them the headline. "Tech Magnate Kidnaps Child Witness. Manhunt underway. Michael's stomach twisted as he read the article. Margaret Wells claimed her husband had suffered a psychotic break, abducting a professor and his daughter after becoming obsessed with conspiracy theories about the Wells family fortune. "They're painting you as delusional," Michael said. "And you as my victim," Robert agreed. "It's clever, makes it hard for us to seek help." "Any word from Catherine?" "She's waiting at the meeting point, confirmed it's secure." Robert lowered his voice. "Eleanor didn't make it. Thomas's men executed her." Michael closed his eyes briefly. Another death in this spiraling nightmare. "The Treasury Department is compromised," Robert continued. "We can't go through official channels." "Then what's the plan?" "Catherine has contacts at the FBI, people outside Thomas's influence. They're assembling a team, but it will take time." A waitress approached with coffee. Conversation paused until she departed. "They'll be watching airports, train stations," Michael observed. Robert nodded. "That's why we're driving." Catherine has a car waiting with clean papers. Lily, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke. "The man with the scar is in the parking lot." Both men tensed. "What?" Michael whispered. "Black car," Lily continued calmly, still arranging sugar packets. "He's talking on the phone." Robert casually glanced out the window. A black sedan was indeed parked across the lot, a man leaning against it, his face partially turned away. "How did he find us?" Michael breathed. "He didn't," Robert replied. "Not yet. Likely checking all establishments along the highway. Standard search protocol. We need to leave now." "Too suspicious. Finish your coffee normally." "I'll create a distraction." Robert rose casually and headed toward the restrooms. Michael pulled Lily closer, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. Moments later, a pickup truck in the parking lot erupted in flames. As the diner's patrons rushed to the windows in alarm, Robert appeared at the back booth. "Kitchen exit now!" They slipped out amid the confusion, hurrying behind the diner toward a battered station wagon parked beside the dumpsters. Robert hot-wired it in seconds. As they drove away, Michael looked back. Thomas was scanning the diner's parking lot, his face contorted with rage. "That was too close," Michael said, his voice shaking. "He's getting desperate," Robert replied, "which makes him dangerous." They drove in tense silence for 20 minutes before Robert spoke again. "I've been reviewing the files on Sarah's USB drive. It's not just money laundering. The Harringtons are involved in arms dealing, selling weapons to sanctioned countries through their humanitarian foundation. Margaret, too. She's the mastermind. Thomas is her enforcer." Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "When I built my tech company, she saw an opportunity. My legitimate business and connections provided perfect cover for their operations." "And you never suspected?" "For 20 years, Robert admitted, shame evident in his voice. "I was blinded by grief after Rebecca died. Margaret managed our charity work, our social connections. I trusted her." Michael gazed at the passing landscape. Sarah trusted her State Department colleagues too. In the back seat, Lily had fallen asleep, the blue box clutched against her chest. "Your daughter is extraordinary," Robert said softly. "The way she spotted Thomas." "She's always been unusually perceptive," Michael replied. "Sarah called it her special sight, said Lily could see things others missed." They turned off the main highway onto a winding country road. After several miles, Robert pulled into a dirt driveway nearly hidden by overgrown bushes. At the end stood a modest farmhouse, its red paint faded by decades of Vermont winters. "Catherine's family property," Robert explained. "Off the grid, no digital footprint." Catherine Chen emerged from the house as they approached. Her suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a flannel shirt, but her professional demeanor remained intact. "The FBI contact will be here at nightfall," she informed them. "They're bringing a federal prosecutor who specializes in financial crimes." Inside, the farmhouse was sparsely furnished, but clean. Catherine had set up a command center on the kitchen table, laptops, satellite phones, and Sarah's evidence spread out in organized chaos. "I've been analyzing Sarah's files," she told them, pointing to a complex diagram of shell companies. "The Harrington Foundation isn't just moving money, they're purchasing defense technology through front companies and reselling to terrorist groups." Michael stared at the diagram in horror. "And Margaret is running this?" "With Thomas as her enforcer," Catherine confirmed. "After Robert's company developed military-grade encryption technology, Margaret saw an opportunity to expand their operation." "My own invention," Robert said bitterly, "used to protect their illegal arms deals." "There's more," Catherine continued. "Sarah discovered something specific, a planned sale happening this month, something called Project Lazarus." Lily, who had been quietly exploring the farmhouse, suddenly appeared in the kitchen doorway. "That's what they argued about," she said. "The man with the scar and Mutti. She said she would tell about Lazarus, and he said no one would believe her." The adults exchanged glances. Michael knelt before his daughter. "When was this, sweetheart? When did you hear them talking?" "The day before the car crash," Lily replied. "Mutti was very scared after he left. That's when she showed me where the blue key was hidden." Evening shadows lengthened across the farmhouse as Catherine prepared dinner. The smell of cooking pasta filled the kitchen, creating an incongruous sense of normalcy amid their crisis. Michael watched from the doorway as Lily arranged silverware on the table with careful precision. "She seems to be holding up well," Catherine observed, stirring the sauce. "Too well," Michael replied quietly. "She hasn't cried once, not about any of this." "Children process trauma differently." "It's more than that." Michael's eyes followed his daughter. "It's like she was prepared for this somehow, like Sarah knew this day might come." Robert entered the kitchen, ending their conversation. "The FBI contact just confirmed. They'll be here within the hour." The dinner that followed was a strange affair. Pasta and garlic bread served amid discussions of money laundering and arms dealing. Lily ate methodically, seemingly untroubled by the dark conversation surrounding her. As Catherine cleared the plates, headlights swept across the front windows. Robert tensed, drawing his weapon. "FBI?" Michael asked. "They're early," Robert replied, moving to the window, "and that's not a government vehicle." Catherine immediately began gathering the evidence from the table. "Safe room, basement, now." Michael scooped up Lily and followed Catherine to a pantry door that concealed narrow stairs. They descended into darkness just as someone pounded on the front door. The basement had been converted into a secure room. Concrete walls, no windows, a heavy metal door at the top of the stairs. Catherine sealed it behind them, activating a security system. On a monitor they watched as Robert answered the door with his gun hidden behind his back. A woman stood on the porch, mid-60s, elegant in an expensive coat despite the rural setting. "Margaret," Catherine breathed. Michael clutched Lily tighter. On screen, Margaret Wells stepped inside, alone and seemingly unarmed. "How did she find us?" Michael whispered. Catherine's expression was grim. "The only ones who knew about this place were me, Robert, and my FBI contact. The mole," Michael realized, "in the Treasury Department." They watched as Margaret spoke to Robert, her posture relaxed, despite the obvious tension between them. No audio fed through to the basement, but Margaret's body language suggested confidence, not fear. "What is she doing here alone?" Catherine wondered. "Where's Thomas?" On screen, Margaret handed Robert what appeared to be a file folder. He opened it, his expression changing from suspicion to shock. "I don't like this," Catherine murmured. Robert led Margaret to the living room, where they continued their conversation. Margaret's gestures became more animated, pleading it seemed. Robert remained rigid, disbelieving. After several minutes, Robert glanced toward the kitchen, toward the hidden basement door. Margaret followed his gaze, her lips curving into a smile that sent chills down Michael's spine. "She knows we're here," he whispered. The monitor suddenly flickered, then went dark. "Camera's been disabled," Catherine reported, moving quickly to a weapons case. She removed a handgun, checking it efficiently. "What's happening?" Michael asked, placing himself between Lily and the stairs. "I don't know," Catherine admitted. "But we need to prepare for—" The security system chimed, indicating the basement door had been unlocked from above. Catherine aimed her weapon at the top of the stairs as the heavy door swung open. Robert appeared, his face ashen. "It's okay," he called down. "You should come up, all of you." "Robert!" Catherine kept her gun raised. "What's going on?" "Margaret came alone. She says Thomas is coming for her too now." He sounded dazed. "She brought proof." "It's a trap," Catherine insisted. "She didn't know about this house," Robert countered. "She followed me, placed a tracker on me when we were married. She says she wants to help us stop Thomas." "And you believe her?" Michael demanded. "I'm not sure." Robert's expression was troubled. "But she knows about Project Lazarus. Says Thomas plans to complete the sale tomorrow, experimental biological weapons. If she's telling the truth, we don't have time to wait for the FBI." Catherine and Michael exchanged glances, both deeply skeptical. "Please," Margaret's voice called from behind Robert. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but Thomas has gone rogue. He'll kill me too if he finds me." Catherine lowered her gun fractionally. "Let me search her first." Minutes later they gathered in the farmhouse living room. Margaret Wells sat perched on the edge of a threadbare armchair, looking wildly out of place in her designer clothes and perfect coiffure. Her eyes kept darting to Lily, who stared back with unnerving intensity. "Explain," Catherine demanded, her gun still visible as a reminder. Margaret smoothed her skirt, composing herself. "Thomas was supposed to follow protocol, eliminate Robert quietly, make it look like a heart attack. Using the restaurant manager was his idea, not mine." She glanced at Robert. "I never wanted a public scandal." "You just wanted me dead," Robert said flatly. "I wanted control of the company," Margaret corrected. "The encryption technology." Thomas promised a clean solution. "And Sarah Parker," Michael interjected, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Was her death a clean solution too?" Margaret had the decency to look uncomfortable. "That was Thomas. She discovered shipment manifests during a routine translation, started asking questions." She was my wife," Michael's voice cracked. "And now Thomas wants to eliminate me," Margaret continued. "I've become a liability. Too many connections to the attempted murder." "Convenient timing," Catherine observed coldly. "Project Lazarus happens tomorrow night," Margaret insisted. "A shipment of engineered pathogens being sold to the highest bidder. Thomas handles the operations side. I manage the finances. Without me, he's accelerated the timeline." "And we should trust you why?" Robert asked. Margaret opened the file she'd brought. "Because I brought insurance, account numbers, contact protocols, meeting locations. Everything you need to stop the exchange." As the adults examined Margaret's evidence, Lily approached her, those wise eyes studying the older woman's face. "You're lying," Lily said simply. Everyone turned to stare at the child. "Excuse me?" Margaret's composure slipped momentarily. "Mutti said people blink more when they lie," Lily explained. "And you keep touching your watch. You're waiting for something." The farmhouse erupted in chaos, seconds after Lily's accusation. Margaret lunged for her purse, but Catherine was faster, tackling her to the floor. A small device clattered across the hardwood, a transmitter, its red light blinking steadily. "Thomas is coming," Robert realized, moving swiftly to the window. In the distance, headlights appeared on the rural road. Multiple vehicles. "You miserable, treacherous—" Catherine twisted Margaret's arms behind her back, securing them with a zip tie. "You don't understand," Margaret hissed. "He'll kill me too now. I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," Michael said, gathering Lily and the blue box. "We need to go. Now." The woods, Catherine directed, hauling Margaret to her feet. There's an old hunting cabin half a mile east. Robert, you know it? He nodded grimly. Your grandfather's place, I remember. They fled through the back door as the vehicles approached, lights cutting through the darkness. Margaret stumbled along, forced to accompany them at gunpoint. The autumn forest was dense with shadows, fallen leaves muffling their footsteps as they hurried between ancient maple trees. "Why bring her?" Michael whispered, nodding toward Margaret. "Insurance," Catherine replied grimly, "and she still has information we need." They reached the hunting cabin just as gunfire erupted back at the farmhouse. Thomas's men had arrived, sweeping the property with tactical precision. The cabin was little more than a one-room shelter, with boarded windows and a stone fireplace. Catherine secured Margaret to a support beam, while Robert barricaded the door with the few pieces of furniture available. "The FBI contact?" Michael asked. Catherine checked her watch. "Should have been here by now." "Thomas must have intercepted them," Robert surmised. "The mole again." Outside, dogs barked in the distance. The search was expanding into the woods. "We can't stay here," Robert said. "It's too obvious. Thomas knows these hunting cabins exist." Lily, who had been silently watching Margaret, suddenly spoke. "There's another way." She pointed to the stone fireplace. "Behind there." The adults exchanged confused glances, but Lily approached the fireplace with confidence. She pressed against a particular stone, and to everyone's astonishment, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow tunnel. "How did you know that was there?" Michael asked, amazed. "I saw it," Lily replied simply. "In my head." Catherine looked unsettled. "My grandfather used to smuggle alcohol during Prohibition. These tunnels connected several properties, but they've been sealed for decades. How could she possibly know?" "Sarah," Michael realized. "She must have shown Lily old maps or photos." "Impossible," Catherine said. "My family never documented these passages. It was too dangerous." No time remained for discussion. Flashlight beams swept the forest outside, drawing closer to the cabin. Robert untied Margaret, keeping a firm grip on her arm. "Move," he ordered, guiding her toward the hidden passage. One by one, they entered the narrow tunnel. Robert sealed the entrance behind them, plunging them into darkness until Catherine activated a flashlight. The passage was low and cramped, forcing them to move in single file through the damp earth. "Where does this lead?" Michael asked, helping Lily navigate the uneven floor. "If I remember my grandfather's stories, there's an exit near the old mill by the river," Catherine replied, "about a mile from here." They moved slowly through the darkness, the sound of dripping water and their own breathing the only noise. Behind them, Margaret had grown uncharacteristically quiet, her earlier arrogance replaced by genuine fear. "You miscalculated, didn't you?" Robert said to her as they walked. "Thomas never planned to share power. You were always disposable once I was gone." "We were partners for 20 years, Margaret replied, her voice hollow. "I never thought he'd turn on family." "Like you turned on your husband?" Michael interjected bitterly. Margaret fell silent again. After what seemed like hours, the tunnel widened into a small chamber where several passages converged. Catherine paused, studying the options. "I think we go left," she said, but uncertainty tinged her voice. "These tunnels may have collapsed in places. It's been nearly a century." As if confirming her fears, a distant rumble echoed through the passage they'd just traversed. Dust and small stones showered down from the ceiling. "They're blasting the entrances," Robert realized, "sealing us in." "Thomas knows about the tunnels," Margaret admitted. "I told him years ago when we first discussed using the Vermont properties." Catherine rounded on her furiously. "You've killed us all." Lily tugged at Michael's sleeve. "Not that way," she said, pointing to Catherine's chosen path. "This one." She indicated a narrower tunnel branching to the right. "How could you possibly know?" Margaret demanded. "I just know," Lily replied with a child's simple certainty. "This way leads outside. That one doesn't anymore." Catherine hesitated. torn between her own knowledge and the child's inexplicable confidence. Another explosion shook the chamber closer this time, making the decision for them. "We follow Lily," Robert declared, already moving toward the right-hand tunnel. The passage Lily chose was smaller than the others, requiring them to crouch as they moved forward. Margaret stumbled several times, unused to such physical demands. After several hundred yards, the tunnel began to slope upward. "Fresh air," Catherine noted, sniffing the increasingly cool breeze. She was right. The passage eventually ended at a rusted iron door set into what appeared to be a hillside. Robert forced it open with difficulty, revealing a star-filled night sky and the sound of rushing water nearby. They emerged beside an old water wheel, long since abandoned, but still standing beside a swiftly flowing river. The mill Catherine had mentioned was a crumbling ruin on the opposite bank. "We need to keep moving," Robert urged. "The river will help mask our trail from the dogs." As they followed the riverbank, Lily walking steadily alongside her father, Margaret finally asked the question that had clearly been bothering her. How did she know about the tunnel? About which path to take? Michael glanced down at his daughter. Sarah always said Lily had special gifts, ways of knowing things she shouldn't. That's not possible," Margaret insisted. "Says the woman who tried to have her husband poisoned," Catherine remarked dryly. Robert consulted his watch, which somehow still functioned despite everything they'd endured. 3 hours until dawn. We need to find transportation and contact my attorney in Boston. She has connections that can help us." "Thomas will have people watching her," Margaret warned. "We don't need to go to her," Robert replied. "Just make contact. She can provide resources." They continued along the river for nearly an hour before reaching a small town, its main street dark, except for a 24-hour gas station glowing like a beacon in the night. "Wait here," Robert instructed the others, concealing them in the trees beside a parking lot. "I'll get us a vehicle." As Robert disappeared toward the gas station, Catherine kept her gun trained on Margaret. "Why did you do it?" Michael asked suddenly. "You had wealth, position, a husband who trusted you. Why risk everything for this?" Margaret studied him with tired eyes. "Power. The Harrington name was fading into obscurity, old money dwindling away. Thomas and I rebuilt it, created something lasting." She glanced at Lily. "Something that would outlive us." "And now?" Catherine pressed. "Now I just want to survive," Margaret admitted. "Thomas won't stop until everyone who knows about Project Lazarus is eliminated, including me." "What exactly is Project Lazarus?" Michael asked. Before Margaret could answer, Lily spoke, her voice unnervingly calm. "It brings death back to life," she said. "That's what the man with the scar told Mutti." The stolen pickup truck rumbled along the interstate, its headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. Robert drove with tense focus, while Catherine maintained her vigilant watch over Margaret from the back seat. Michael sat with Lily between him and Robert, the child finally asleep after their harrowing night. "My contact in Boston confirms Thomas is coordinating the manhunt personally," Robert said quietly. "FBI, state police, even local departments. He's using Margaret's accusations as cover." "Where are we going?" Michael asked. "Albany. My attorney is sending someone to meet us, someone Thomas doesn't know." Robert glanced in the rearview mirror at Margaret. "Meanwhile, I think it's time our guest explains exactly what Project Lazarus is." Margaret straightened, wincing from her bound hands. "It's a bioweapon, a modified strain of pneumonic plague. Fast-acting, highly contagious, with an engineered resistance to standard antibiotics." Catherine inhaled sharply. "You are selling a plague." "Thomas handled that side," Margaret replied defensively. "I managed the financial aspects. All I know is that it was developed in a private lab in Eastern Europe. The sale is scheduled for tonight. 10 million in cryptocurrency for 5 sealed canisters." "Where?" Robert demanded. "A private airfield outside Albany. The buyers are arriving at midnight, representatives from a terrorist organization. Thomas will personally oversee the exchange. Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. And you were willing to facilitate this? Mass murder for profit? I told you, I handled the money, not the merchandise, Margaret insisted. When Thomas first proposed expanding into weapons technology, it was supposed to be conventional arms only. This biological component was recent, his initiative, not mine. How convenient, Catherine commented acidly. As the eastern sky lightened with approaching dawn, they reached the outskirts of Albany. Robert navigated to an industrial area where warehouses stood like monoliths against the brightening horizon. He pulled into a vacant lot behind an abandoned factory building. "We wait here," he announced, killing the engine. The silence that followed was heavy with exhaustion and tension. Lily stirred, blinking awake. She looked out at the desolate surroundings without comment or complaint. A black SUV appeared 20 minutes later, pulling alongside their truck. Robert tensed until he recognized the driver, a young woman with short, dark hair and the alert posture of former military. "That's our contact," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Diana Chen, Catherine's niece." Diana approached cautiously, her hand near the concealed weapon at her waist. When she recognized Robert, she relaxed marginally. "Uncle Robert," she greeted him. "Aunt Catherine, we need to move quickly." Inside the SUV, Diana briefed them as she drove through Albany's awakening streets. "The FBI team that was supposed to meet you was ambushed. 2 agents killed, 3 wounded. Thomas Harrington has effectively declared war on federal law enforcement, all while making it look like you're the dangerous ones." "What about my attorney? Is she safe?" Robert asked. "For now. She's arranged a secure location where we can regroup." Diana glanced in the rearview mirror at Margaret. "Is that her? The wife?" "Yes," Catherine confirmed. "She's been most cooperative since discovering her brother plans to eliminate her too." They arrived at a nondescript office building on the outskirts of the city. Diana led them through a service entrance and up a freight elevator to a suite of offices that had been hastily converted into an operations center. Maps and surveillance photos covered one wall, while computer workstations hummed along another. A tall, distinguished African-American man in his 60s approached as they entered. "Robert, thank God." "James." Robert embraced his attorney briefly. "Thank you for this." "When Catherine called, I didn't believe it at first," James admitted. "But then I started digging into the Harrington Foundation finances." He gestured to the evidence wall. "What we found is staggering. The money laundering alone spans 15 countries and involves billions of dollars." "And now biological weapons," Robert added grimly. James looked troubled. "Yes, Diana briefed me on Project Lazarus. If Thomas completes this sale, thousands could die," Catherine finished, "or more." "We've contacted trusted officials at Homeland Security," James explained. "They're assembling a tactical team, but bureaucracy moves slowly. The raid won't be authorized until tomorrow at the earliest." "That's too late," Robert stated flatly. "The exchange happens tonight." James nodded gravely, "which is why we've prepared an alternative approach." He led them to a conference room, where satellite images of a small airfield were projected on a screen. "This is the exchange location, based on the coordinates Margaret provided. Isolated, minimal security, perfect for a clandestine meeting." Diana stepped forward. "I've assembled a team, former special forces, people I served with. We can infiltrate the location before the exchange and position ourselves to intervene." "That's extremely dangerous," James cautioned. "These are mercenaries we're dealing with, heavily armed and without conscience." "We don't have a choice," Robert insisted. "We can't let those weapons leave that airfield." While the adults debated strategy, Michael noticed Lily had wandered to the evidence wall. She stood before a photograph of Thomas Harrington, studying it with unnerving intensity. "Lily?" Michael joined her. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" "He was at our house more than once," she said quietly. "Not just the time Mutti argued with him. He came other times too, when you were teaching late classes." Michael felt his blood run cold. "What? Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I forgot until now. Seeing his picture again made me remember." Lily's small finger traced the scar under Thomas's eye in the photograph. "He brought presents sometimes, said he was Mutti's special friend." Michael struggled to process this revelation. Sarah had never mentioned Thomas visiting their home, never indicated any personal connection to the Harrington family beyond her translation work. "Did your mother seem afraid of him?" he asked carefully. Lily considered this. Not at first. They laughed together, but later, after she found the special papers, she was different with him. "That's when they started speaking German when I was nearby. They thought I wouldn't understand." Margaret had approached silently during this exchange. Now she spoke, her voice subdued. "Thomas always had a way with women. It was part of his methodology, seduction as a means of control." Michael rounded on her furiously. "Are you suggesting he was—" "I'm suggesting," Margaret cut in, "that Thomas would have used any connection available to monitor Sarah's work. If he suspected she had access to sensitive documents, he would have cultivated a relationship to keep her close, to assess what she knew. And when he confirmed she knew too much," Catherine added grimly, "he eliminated her." The implications struck Michael with physical force. Sarah's death, the car accident, it hadn't been a random act of silencing a translator who'd seen too much. It had been personal, deliberate, perhaps even intimate in its betrayal. Robert placed a steadying hand on Michael's shoulder. "This is why we have to stop him, Michael, not just to clear our names or prevent a weapons sale. For Sarah, for justice." Across the room, James was conferring urgently with Diana over a newly arrived message. His expression was grave as he approached the group. "We have a problem," he announced. "One of my sources just reported that Thomas has accelerated the timetable. The exchange isn't happening at midnight." "When?" Robert demanded. "The buyer's plane filed a new flight plan. They're landing at 4 this afternoon, less than 6 hours from now." The afternoon sun hung low in the western sky as Diana's team established positions around the private airfield. From their vantage point in the nearby woods, Robert and Michael observed through binoculars as Thomas's men patrolled the perimeter, heavily armed and alert. "8 guards that we can see," Robert murmured. "Probably more inside the hangar." Diana nodded, adjusting her tactical vest. "My team is in position. We've got snipers covering the main approach and 3 infiltration units ready to move on my signal. Remember, our priority is securing the bioweapon containers," James reminded them through the radio. He and Catherine remained at the operations center, coordinating with their Homeland Security contact. "Those canisters cannot be breached during the confrontation." Margaret sat handcuffed in a vehicle nearby, guarded by one of Diana's team. She had provided the final details they needed: access codes, guard rotations, and most crucially, how to identify the Project Lazarus containers. "What about Lily?" Michael asked anxiously. His daughter was with Catherine, but even the secure office building felt too exposed after everything they'd witnessed. "She's safe," Robert assured him. "Catherine would die before letting anything happen to her." At the operations center, Catherine watched as Lily carefully arranged colored pins on the large map of the airfield, creating a pattern only she understood. "What are you doing, Lily?" Catherine asked gently. "Marking the safe paths," the child replied. "The ones without bad men watching." Catherine studied the pattern with growing amazement. The pins precisely marked blind spots in the patrol routes they had observed during surveillance, information Lily couldn't possibly have access to. "How do you know these are safe paths?" she asked. Lily looked up with those unsettlingly wise eyes. "I can see them, in my head, like Mutti taught me." At the airfield, a sleek executive jet appeared on the horizon, beginning its descent. Diana spoke urgently into her radio. Buyers approaching. All teams stand by. Inside the hangar, Thomas Harrington supervised as his men arranged 5 metal containers on a table. Each was the size of a small briefcase, sealed with biohazard warnings and electronic locks. "Perfect timing," he murmured as the jet's engines whined down outside. He straightened his tie, the scar beneath his eye stark against his tanned skin. "Gentlemen, let's make history." The jet's door opened. 3 men in dark suits descended the steps, accompanied by armed guards. Thomas greeted them with practiced charm, leading them toward the hangar where the deadly cargo awaited. "Now!" Diana commanded. Her team emerged from concealment with military precision. Snipers eliminated the perimeter guards simultaneously, while infiltration units breached the hangar from 3 directions. Thomas and the buyers were surrounded before they could reach for weapons. "Federal agents," Diana announced, though they were in fact private contractors. "Hands where we can see them." Thomas's expression registered shock, then fury as he recognized Robert among the assault team. "You!" he spat, "always interfering with progress." "Progress?" Robert approached cautiously, his weapon trained on his brother-in-law. "You call mass murder progress?" The buyers attempted to retreat to their aircraft, but Diana's team had already secured the pilot and exits. "It's over, Thomas," Robert continued. "We have everything, the financial records, the weapons transactions, Margaret's testimony." Thomas's composure cracked, his aristocratic veneer falling away to reveal the predator beneath. "Margaret. She's alive. And talking," Michael added, stepping forward, "about everything, including Sarah Parker." At the mention of Sarah's name, Thomas's eyes narrowed. "The translator? Ancient history." "She was my wife," Michael said, his voice shaking with controlled rage. "And Lily's mother." Something shifted in Thomas's expression, a flicker of recognition. "The child, with the braids." A cold smile spread across his face. Sarah spoke of her often, her special little girl, so observant, so gifted with languages, like mother, like daughter. "You killed her," Michael accused, "made it look like an accident." "As she was going to expose everything," Thomas replied without remorse. "Such a shame. She was quite enjoyable company." Michael lunged forward, but Robert restrained him. "He's baiting you. Don't give him the satisfaction." Diana's team secured the bioweapon containers, while the buyers were handcuffed and led away. Thomas remained defiant even as he was restrained, his eyes fixed on Robert. "You think this ends here? The Harrington network spans continents. I have contingencies, fail-safes, all compromised," came a new voice. Everyone turned to see James entering the hangar, accompanied by a team of actual federal agents in tactical gear. Behind them walked Catherine, and beside her, to Michael's horror, stood Lily, solemn and composed in her child's dress. "What is she doing here?" Michael demanded, rushing to his daughter. "She shouldn't be anywhere near this." "She insisted," Catherine explained, "said she needed to see him, that it was important." Thomas stared at the child approaching him, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You're the girl from the restaurant, the one who speaks German." Lily regarded him calmly, then spoke in perfect German. "Du hast meine Mutter getötet. Sie wusste, dass du kommen würdest." "You killed my mother. She knew you would come." Thomas paled visibly. "Impossible." Lily continued in English, her voice clear and unwavering. "Mutti made recordings of you talking about the weapons, about hurting people. She hid them where only I would find them." "The blue box," Michael realized. Lily nodded. "Not just papers. A tiny recorder. Mutti showed me how to use it. Said if anything happened to her, I should keep it safe until the man with the kindest eyes came to help." She turned to Robert. "That's you. She said you would understand what to do with her evidence when the time was right." James stepped forward, addressing the federal agents. "The recording is authenticated and logged into evidence. along with comprehensive financial records and Margaret Wells's sworn testimony. Thomas's facade of control finally shattered. He lunged against his restraints, roaring with rage, but the federal agents secured him firmly. As Thomas was led away, still hurling threats and accusations, Lily watched with a calmness that both troubled and amazed the adults around her. Only when the last federal vehicle had departed did she finally turn to her father, her small face crumpling as the extraordinary composure she had maintained through their ordeal finally broke. "Daddy," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Can we go home now?" Michael gathered his daughter in his arms, his own tears falling freely. "Yes, sweetheart, we can go home." 3 months later, the Harrington Wells case had become one of the largest financial crime prosecutions in American history. Thomas and Margaret both faced life sentences for charges ranging from money laundering to conspiracy to commit murder. Robert's name had been cleared, his company saved, though he had stepped down as CEO to focus on reforming the charitable foundation. On a crisp winter afternoon, Robert visited the Parker home in Boston, carrying a small wrapped package. Michael welcomed him warmly. Their shared ordeal had forged an unlikely friendship between the language professor and the tech millionaire. Lily was in the backyard, building a snowman with the focused attention she brought to everything. Her therapy was progressing well. The nightmares had become less frequent, though her uncanny perceptiveness remained. "I brought something for Lily," Robert explained, presenting the package. Inside was a beautiful music box with a blue key. Not Sarah's key, but one remarkably similar. "The foundation has established a trust for her education," Robert continued, "and a scholarship fund in Sarah's name for linguistically gifted children." Michael nodded gratefully, watching his daughter through the window. Sarah would have approved. "She was extraordinary," Robert said quietly. "To prepare Lily so carefully, to hide the evidence where only she would find it. She must have suspected for some time what might happen." Lily told her therapist that Sarah used to play special games with her, memory exercises, observation drills. She was training her, Robert, just in case. They fell silent, contemplating the remarkable foresight of a mother who had prepared her child to survive in a dangerous world. A world where a 7-year-old's perfect German and extraordinary perception had ultimately brought down a criminal empire and avenged her mother's death. Outside, Lily had completed her snowman. As if sensing their gaze, she turned toward the window and waved, her smile brightening the winter afternoon. For a moment, she was simply a child again, not a witness, not a savior, not a vessel for her mother's final justice. Just a little girl with copper braids, building snowmen in the Boston sunshine,